So this week we do have two chapters. I don't think either one of them is going to take you that long. Views is actually quite short. Functions deals with all the different built-in functions that we have in SQL and SQL Server. And so you'll go through the different categories of functions. You'll learn about the different string functions. There's quite a few. And there's all sorts of examples in here that will help you understand what those functions do. There's also interactive links, so you can practice. There's string functions, which are functions that you apply to text. There's numeric functions, date and time functions, and then we get into the other category of functions. And you should kind of carefully read through case because this is something that we will be using. Basically, it lets you check for multiple conditions. And if the conditions are true, then you can execute different commands. There is an if function where you're checking a Boolean expression, which is something that it's a condition that will either test true or false. And if it's true, you tell it what to do. And if it's false, you tell it what to do. We have a choose function, which uses an index number. And you basically use that number to grab a value from the list. There is a coalesce function, which basically returns the first column that isn't null. You have an is null function, which actually looks for null values and lets you replace them with something else. And we have a grouping function that we will be using. The grouping function comes in handy if we have null values. So if you have null values that are displaying, you can use the grouping function. And in this case, if you have a column and you're checking to see if it is equal to 1, that means you are totaling on that column. Okay, so then you're telling it to display the text in quotes instead of the word null. Okay, and you can see down here that it is in fact doing that. So it's doing a total here. So instead of null, now it's displaying all because we told it to do that. So grouping is used with totals. The ranking functions, I'm not going to have you use. You don't really need to worry about them, but there are several different functions that deal with ranking the items. We also have analytic functions, which I don't believe you have to use in the textbook assignment either. You should be aware that they're there. First value basically returns the first value in a result set. Last value brings you the last one. Lead lets you compare values in the current row to the values in the next row. Okay, and leg does the current row to the previous row. None of these are actual things that I'm going to make you use in the assignment, but you should be aware that they exist. What you're going to have to do in the Chapter 9 assignment is use the functions that are more common. So you are going to be using the string functions and the numeric functions and the date functions. Those are the ones that people use most often. You're also going to use some of the functions in the other category. So case, if, choose, coalesce, is null, and grouping. Those are the functions that are more widely used. So those are the ones that I'm going to have you guys doing in the assignment. The wages file is one that you are going to have to run. It's going to create a table and populate it with values. And as you can see, there's quite a few nulls in here. Okay, so you are going to need to run this. to get the table and the values. Then you are going to do the lab assignment. So the lab assignment lets you create your own queries, and I would keep it simple. You have lots of examples in the lecture and in the textbook assignment that you can draw from, but you need to create your own string functions. Okay, you just need to create 2 of them. And in the lecture demo, I go through every single one. So you can use any table or columns that you want to accomplish the task. You can even use your own final project if you prefer to use that. Okay, so it's pretty open-ended as far as what you use. You also need to use a number function, one numeric function, and the rand function. Okay, so you'll kind of go through here and you'll be creating your own. Then you're going to move on to views. Views are selects that you store as a view object, and it allows you to rerun them without having to recreate the select. So that's basically all a view is. So you've got your select, and then you do create view on top of that, and it will create a view object. So that's really all there is to creating a view if you follow the syntax. And as far as updating data's in a view, there are some rules for that that you are going to need to memorize. If the view is only accessing one table, then you are allowed to do updates, as long as it doesn't include a distinct or a top clause, as long as it does not include an aggregate function or a calculated value, then you are allowed to do updates using the view. So updates, inserting rows, deleting rows, you can do that in views as long as you have followed the rules when you have created your view. To delete or modify a view, to delete, you're going to use drop, and to modify, you're going to use alter. Personally, I think it's easiest to create a view in code. However, you can use a view designer to create them as well. So this just shows you how to use your SSMS interface to create a view. And because a view is an object that is saved with your database, you can use some system commands to view all the various objects. And the system commands that I've included here are schemas, and all we've been doing right now is DBO, but when we get into chapters, I think 17 on security, you're going to learn how to create other schemas. You can access all your tables, the columns, your keys. You can see this is a list of primary keys. You can access all your foreign keys and all the other database objects. So there is a link here to more information if you were curious about how to access other things. For the textbook assignment, you're basically going to be creating several different views. We have 4 tasks. So you're going to start by creating a view, and you're going to do a view that you can update. And by update, I mean you can update data in your rows. Here's a limited update view. Okay, so you're not going to be able to do as many updates with the limited update view, or you're not going to be able to update as much. And then you are going to create another view and yet a third view. You are going to change some of the data in a view or using a view. This is invoice date that we are going to set to the current date. And we are doing this update using a view instead of a table. And as you work through here, you'll get a feel for how to actually create views, delete views, update data through views, all of that kind of fun stuff. This is the alter command, so we're going to change the view itself. And we'll also practice some of the system catalog commands. And then for the lab assignment, this is a final project lab assignment. And all you need to do is create 4 views. One of the views has to be updatable, which means you have to be able to update rows in your table, insert rows, delete rows. And my big hidden for that is keep it simple. Don't do a join, don't do top, don't do distinct, don't do any aggregates. Just keep it very simple and basic, and then you'll be able to use it to update. The other 3 views can be on whatever you want, but one has to be updatable. Okay, and then you're going to take the view that's updatable and you're going to modify the data in at least one column. So that is the final project lab assignment. Should not take you all that long. The assignment that takes people probably the longest is the chapter 9 lab assignment. And that's just because you have to apply using those functions. And my advice on that is just to keep everything very basic and simple. Okay, if you keep it basic and simple, then those functions are not hard to use. If you run into trouble, okay, if you get errors and you don't know how to fix them, you're going to have to copy your script, paste it into an email, and send it to me so I can actually run it. Then I'll be able to help you. Without actually seeing the code, it's really hard for me to know what the problem is. So if you have problems or questions, please let me know and have a great week.